Hey everyone, this is Jacob, the host of the Three Circle Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Please leave a comment if you get some out of the video, or even if you don't. I hope you stick along for the whole episode, and I'll talk to you after. And Brendan, my man, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. It's an honor to be here. It's been a minute since I've done a podcast or I've done a seminar or I've had an opportunity to interact like this. So I'm extremely excited. So I'm ready to get after it and see what we can get into and hopefully help some people too.
Awesome. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself so people kind of know a little bit about you?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'll make it brief because I feel like I could go, pretty deep in a lot of different directions just with like how much life I've lived in 28 years. But I think the main points, background wise, I was a combat medic in the Army for 4 years, and then that led me into kind of entrepreneurship. I owned a personal training, nutrition coaching business for a few years, and that led me into kind of where I am now, which is real estate investing and then mindset consulting. So that's pretty much my path. That's what's got me here and now, and I think, one of my biggest passions is trying to help people and grow myself and evolve myself as well, just so people kind of have some background about me.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been a heck of a journey, getting to know you. It's been really cool to kind of see you do all the stuff that you're doing. I think a lot of people don't really understand, just kind of the path a person can take from fitness to like 30 different areas. They think what they start out doing is what they're going to end up doing, but it's been really cool to watch. So yeah, man, I think let's jump right in. So the topic I was kind of thinking about tonight, as I talked about earlier, was what is the difference between being a boy and being a man, right? I think a lot of guys nowadays are stuck in that boyhood mentality, right? They never transitioned out of that phase of life, and therefore they're grown, but they're not really a man, right? They still emulate those very childlike behaviors or mentalities. So I would kind of get your opinion on that. Kind of like, have you seen in your experience? I mean, I've definitely seen my experience, guys my age struggle with this, but kind of getting your opinion on that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. I think specific to your audience, there's so many people who are going to benefit from the conversation that we have here today, because I know personally we both have a lot of direct experience within this topic. Obviously, transitioning from boyhood to manhood, it's from my perspective, and obviously I'm biased, but it's one of the most challenging transitions that somebody can make. So when I think about how I can most effectively respond to that question, I mean, I can't help but just want to give perspective about what I have experienced. I could give perspectives about clients and about other people all day long, and some people might come up within this, but I think primarily it feels best for me to just share kind of my experience and how I've seen myself grow through that, and what I feel at this point in my life it actually means to be a man versus a boy. And I think one of the first things I'll say, when you first brought that to me, it was like, what does that really mean to me? And I think for me, it's important to get very clear on, like, for me, it's not, I think, what a lot of Western society might deem a man, this kind of over masculine, intoxicated type of an individual who is just really forceful. And you got to just fucking keep pushing, keep fucking pushing, keep going, keep going, keep going. I don't think that's what a man is. I really don't. I think that that's a part of being a man, is having that type of force, that type of resilience, the ability to persevere through challenging and hard times. Absolutely. But I think more so it's sacrificing yourself, your current present self, current values, current beliefs, even current perspectives and thoughts that you currently hold that are serving you at the present moment, sacrificing those for something more than yourself, for somebody more, to serve somebody more, to serve yourself sometimes too. But for me, it's this constant sacrifice so that you can be more and provide more. That's what I think being a man is. And within that, it's fundamental. And this is one of the biggest shifts that I've seen for myself, and I see from other people too, going from boyhood to manhood. It's responsibility. It's a lot, learning how to take responsibility for your life, for your mind, for your body, for your feelings, for your attention, for your finances, for your reality, It's a lot to learn how to do that. And I think that for me, that's one of the biggest differences I see, though, is boys are not fully capable or fully aware of how to do that. They weren't taught how to do that, or maybe they're still in the process of learning how to do that. And I am too. It's kind of this never-ending process. But initially, those are the first kind of perspectives that come to me within my own perspective of what it means, to transition from boyhood to manhood.
Yeah, man. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's funny. I think back to, my first bonfire down here that I went to for a men's group, and like, I was like, whoa, if I had this growing up, this would have changed a lot. That, that fire, the intensity, the energy about being around other guys who've gone through that transition. You could feel that. It's physical, right? And so many guys never get that. Like, for most young men nowadays, there are no, especially in Western society, there are no rites of passage anymore. There's no, besides your 13th birthday, 16th birthday, and it's like a day, people congratulate you, and then you're expected to have it all kind of figured out, right? I never had that very impactful experience. So like when I transitioned, it's been very much more recently, I had to do it pretty much on my own, right? I'm having to figure it out. Like we talked about finances, feelings, beliefs, all of that. It's hard if you've never had anyone to show you. And that's why so many guys fall into these bad habits and cycles, because they served them when they were younger. They had no one to guide them when they were younger. So they just keep taking them right into adulthood and nothing ever happens, right? So when it comes to rites of passage, I don't know if you've ever had any. I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Like, what are some things? Because I'm all about practicality here, right? Spirituality can be very wooey, right? So making that a thing that I can do on a daily, monthly, weekly basis, and engage in these things to give myself this need, to meet this need inside of me that these modern vices cannot meet. Like, what is a rite of passage to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I love, first of all, before I dive into that, I love how this is all just on the fly, because you're getting the most present and most authentic reactions out of me, which I think is really powerful. Like for people listening, like when watching, we didn't verse or script any of this shit. We're just going for it. So I think that's extremely powerful, and I love it. I think I thrive in those situations. So rite of passage, I mean, it's a great question. And I think, everyone's kind of definition might be a little different, but it's something that is going to, I think, elicit that type of force that causes you to become more of yourself, right? A rite of passage, it can be many things. You asked about practicality, what's something you or anyone can do every single day. I think it's telling yourself you're going to do something and fucking doing it again and again and again and again. That's a rite of passage every day, as you're proving yourself worthy again and again and again. You're proving it to yourself. You don't need to prove it to anybody else. Like what I'm capable of and who I am and what I believe to be true about myself has nothing to do with Jacob or with anybody else, and vice versa. The same thing's true for you. So, I think that's my idea of a rite of passage. Now that's a very simplistic, very applicable practice that I think anyone can do every day, man or woman or anybody, is hold yourself accountable. That's a huge rite of passage. I think if you want to be more, expansive or creative into like more specifics into bigger rites of passage, I want to go back to sacrificing. Like, what are you willing to give up for what it is that you want? And that thing that you want, I think particularly the more powerful it is to you, the more deep it is, the more close it is to your heart and your soul, the more meaningful it is to you, the more you care, then the more you'll sacrifice, the more you'll give up. And that combination of that giving and that sacrifice is what allows you to be connected to your purpose and your meaning and deeper levels of who you are and why you're here. So, for me, that can be done in many ways. I mean, I've sat with a lot of medicine in my time. So for me, particularly, when the first time you mentioned rite of passage, I thought about ayahuasca. For me, I've sat with ayahuasca 4 different times now over the last couple of years. And every time it's a new rite of passage. It's sitting down and it's facing parts of yourself that you're either not wanting to face, or you're afraid of certain things, or you have guilt or shame. Whatever it is, it's you versus you. And you're going in with an intention to grow, to become better. And I keep coming back to become more of yourself. How can you become more? So however anybody wants to do that, I think is entirely up to them. But those are just a few kind of things that come to me in regards to like what a rite of passage is from my perspective, and a couple different ways that I personally have experienced it and continue to kind of experience it and implement it into my life.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, couldn't agree more. It's good to hear that clarity, right? That sense of purpose, right? I think a lot of guys they hear purpose, 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 but it's this very ethereal concept of, well, once I find my purpose, then the rest of my life will be this happily ever after story, right? It's not this thing that you find and then it's an everyday battle, right? I have to continue to grind at my purpose. I have to continue to show up and do this thing every fucking day, even though I don't want to sometimes. And I think also on the other end of that spectrum, right, psychedelics, I definitely, am open to that. I definitely want to go to Peru and experience that. But I have found a lot of people will use it as a shortcut, or they try to use it as a shortcut, right? I hear that. Oh, if I just go do this ayahuasca trip down in Peru, well, then it'll solve all my problems, right? I won't be drinking. I won't be, addicted to porn. I won't be miserable all the time. And they go before they're ready. I've known some people like this, right? They go before they're ready. And when they come back, you can tell something's off, right? They've changed. They went too far out in front of their skis. They got knowledge they weren't ready situationally or just like physically to handle. And right. And then they spend the rest of their life trying to catch up to that. And there's always something a little off, right? So I guess my next question would be like, how do you know, when you're ready to go do that? And then if you are, right, like what are some good steps to kind of take to prepare yourself before you go down and actually experience that type of, life-changing moment?
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell anybody whether they're ready or not. That's between the person and themselves. That's something that they need to sit deeply with and authentically with themselves in whatever way that looks like, whether that's meditation or journaling or just going out in nature or, wherever they can be alone with themselves. They need to be certain within themselves that they're ready for it. Because when you get into the medicine, I mean, it's you, like you're in there. Like I'm not going to say you're by yourself because we're never alone, but that's a big, from my experience, and I'm not the ultimate psychonaut. With my experience, that's a major intention of the medicine. That's why it's such a large rite of passage, is that, you're never alone, but it makes you feel like you are sometimes, so that you can get stronger. So you don't have an out. You don't have, somebody or something to lean into. You don't have that porn, or you don't have that food, or you don't have that caffeine or those drugs or whatever it is. You don't have that shit. You're in there and you're so deep into your own stuff that you got to face it, So I think that, that's my best advice for people to determine if they're actually, ready for that is to just ask themselves deeply and be authentic with themselves. And like, in a way, the medicine calls you too, and it will tell you, like, it can communicate with you and let you know, like, you're ready, and we will protect you, and we have messages for you, and this is the time for you. There's also another side of things other than this intuition based experience. And it's like, where are you at in your life? Like, are you, like, do you have a house? Do you have like, 10, 20, 30 grand set aside? Or do you have a fucking foundation? Or are you just fucking like, do you have no foundation? Because if you don't have a foundation in your life, it's probably not the time, regardless of if you're getting the calling or not. Like, that's just a very real part of our human experience that needs to be taken care of. Basic survival needs, like Maslow's hierarchy. Like, you shouldn't be trying to go reach self-actualization if you don't have your survival needs figured out. Because that's what it sounds like. Your friends that you were referring to, that's a similar scenario. Like, you have to climb this ladder like this, and if you try to jump up here, you're gonna be fucking all mixed up. You know what I mean? The last piece here, brother, and this came to me immediately to help people, within not just psychedelic medicine, but everyday life. It's intention. And why? Like, what's your intention behind this? And then the second piece is integration. So intention and integration. When you're going into a medicine ceremony like ayahuasca, or even you're going to sit down and have your dinner, or you're going to start your day, or you're going to a podcast, what's your intention behind that? Your intention is where all of your energy is going to flow toward. So if you don't have an intention, then you're just going to be kind of lost at sea a little bit. But if you have an intention, you're like, this is why I'm going. I'm going to fix this thing. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to get stronger in this area. I'm going to do this. Then you're going to be much more successful within that specific endeavor. And then the second piece is integration, which it's not just a post-integration. There's pre and intra and post-integration. So the pre-integration is part of the intention, but it's stuff like doing your diet appropriately. Most shamans or ayahuasqueros, they'll recommend you do a full month of a very strict diet with like no red meat, no pork, stay away from certain foods, certain drinks, no alcohol. Some of them don't even they say no sex, no sex related thinking, none of that energy within your consciousness before you step into this type of a realm. And then, the integration afterwards, because it's a powerful, powerful thing, man. And if you don't give yourself at least probably a week or two afterwards where you have space to like just sit with yourself and life and reality and all of the different components of what you experienced and what you're experiencing, then you're not going to have a smooth type of an integration back into your life. So those are my thoughts.
I mean, I think a lot of people can benefit from those. I think a big thing that I've noticed in my life as I've really transitioned is intention and integration, right? Even today, before this podcast, I'm struggling with some internal strife, and intentionally I sat down instead of going back to old habits. I'm going to, kind of figure out what's going on with this. I'm going to sit here intentionally and just kind of feel, because I'm not in pain. Like there's no pain going on physically. It's just all up here, right? So intentionally sitting down as a man and being like, I'm going to feel this whether I want to or not. And then the integration of, okay, I'm integrated with the pain. Then I'm figuring out what it is. And then after, actually I can get through this. That is a right, like almost a psychedelic experience every day that someone could do, right? But people think it has to be this massive, you go to Nepal, or you go down to Peru, and I'm all about how can I bring these lessons into everyday life so that you can make a 1% better ideal to strive for every day. And I do like what you said about sacrifice. 100% agree. You're going to have to willing to sacrifice. Being a man does mean sacrificing. However, I do think there has been a very large proponent in society that men are only good at being martyrs. Right. I've noticed that a lot in media, or maybe just kind of the guys I have talked to. They think their only value is their ability to sacrifice themselves for others, right? They're a martyr. And I disagree with that. I think, it's good to sacrifice yourself, but if your only value to someone is sacrificing your life for them, that's not a whole lot of value. I get wanting to be bigger, like this bigger than life force and being a part of something bigger. But I think the hero's journey is a lot more fulfilling and beneficial to other people than the martyr's journey, right? Sacrificing yourself for yourself, right? To be the hero of your own story is something I think it's kind of got lost in translation in a lot of young men's minds, right? So kind of, if you had to explain the difference of what you thought being a martyr and being a hero is, and kind of what you would lean to, kind of what would your thoughts be on that?
For me, honestly, it's a pretty quick and simple answer. It's are you externally motivated or internally? I think the martyr is you're externally motivated. You're doing something to try to gain some type of validation or approval, acceptance from somebody else, right? And it's a short-term dopamine type of a hit that gives you a small amount of false fulfillment. The opposite is you're doing it because it's true to you. You're doing it for yourself. Yes, it's for them, but it's in an interesting way in that you're doing it for you first. Because it's the same thing. It's when the oxygen mask drops down, when a plane is crashing, you have to put yours on first, or else you can't help anybody else around you. And that's just the concept. Sometimes I think about, I was just actually thinking it, not that like 20 minutes before we hopped on here, I told you I was looking at Ed Milet and John Maxwell. Both of them, I looked it up because I was curious, not because it's super the most relevant thing, but it really is it's very powerful from one perspective. Ed Milet is worth more than 500 million. John Maxwell is worth more than $700 million. So now money's not everything. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not the person who believes money is everything. I do think it has tremendous power though to make a massive difference in this world. And the more we have, the more impact that we can make, the more we can give back, the more we can serve, the more we can do. And that mirrors who and how much we become personally, internally. So don't get it twisted like you get more money and then you're just like a better human. No, it usually mirrors. Like the reason that guys like that have that much money is because of who they are, like how they built themselves to be and how much they provide too. They have that much money because they provide a lot of fucking value. So they're able to receive a lot of money in return. But you know, going back to why I brought that up, why did I bring that up? Why did I bring that up? What was I totally spaced.
The difference between being a martyr and being a hero.
Yeah, but okay, give me just a second. I'm going to pull it out. Oh, it was something along the lines of, you know, if you had that much money, like, does that make you like a selfish person? You know, have $500 million. I think that's something I was thinking about in the car on the way here to, you know, while I was listening to the podcast and just thinking about how much money these guys have, you know, and, you know, there's a lot to this, but, you know, I think largely within that heroes concept, that's where I was going with it. Within the heroes concept, you know, it's not just money, it's money, it's resources, it's who you become as a man, and those are just extensions of that. But when you have more and you become more, as in the hero's journey versus the martyr, right? You're more internally seeking for more of yourself, to grow and expand yourself, which is what our soul and our nature naturally does, is expand. So when you have more, that's the moral of the story. That's why I brought up the John Maxwell and Ed Milet. When you have more, you are more, and then you can give more to other people as well. You're much more impactful. You have more potential, more capacity. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that one, brother.
Yeah, I've experienced that in my own life. In 12th step, one of the promises we have through the journey is that self-seeking will slip away and you will gain interest in others. And I remember getting in being like, that's never going to happen, right? That's just not going to happen. It's just not who I am. And as I've gone through this, I get excited for other people's success. Like genuinely, like, oh my God, my buddy just passed his test or got a job or whatever. And I'm like, yes, they're winning. And that's an awesome feeling, right? Like I wish more people could feel that, because if you have that much excitement for others, then you can have that much excitement for yourself. And I think that's what happens when you transfer that locus of control, which I have noticed is a big problem in young men nowadays, is there's external locus of control, right? The world is out to get me. It's the world's fault. It's society's fault. It's my boss's fault. It's my parents' fault. And you can play that game, right? I mean, you can play that game till the sun comes up and to the moon shines, I don't know, in fucking Peru. Like, we'll go back to Peru. I don't know. I'm kind of feeling that tonight. That doesn't do anything. It does not do a damn thing besides shifting that blame off of yourself and still allowing you to be that young boy. And I see that nowadays. I see that in people around me. And it's so crazy once you transfer it inward and you just know, like, yeah, I can figure out anything I need to in my life. Like, most of it's my fault, but that also is really empowering, because then it's like, I can get this stuff figured out. So how did you go about transferring that?
It's a process, you know, it doesn't happen overnight, you know, and I would be lying to you if I said that it was fully like resolved and that's something that I fully overcame. That'd be a lie. You know, it's a continual process to every single day to show up and do your best. But I think there's a few main focal points within that transition for me. And, you know, I got to go back to, I think I'm a big meaning and purpose guy. So I got to go back to purpose and intention. Like, why? What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because that's so fucking important. You know, like it's really vital to understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. And for me, when I got really clear on my purpose, I noticed simultaneously that that locus of focus actually shifted too. So instead of like, you know, maybe previously focusing externally to try to, you know, receive gratification, you know, or try to feel good about myself, or self-acceptance from, you know, external seeking, when I got really clear on my purpose and my meaning in life, it shifted a lot of that inward. And this purpose now that I live for is the thing that I focus on. That's why I get up. I don't get up 100% to like to do things for other people. I get up because I have a meaning to fulfill within myself, a destiny. I know that I can become more every single day. Now, don't get me wrong. You know what I do for a living. I'm very passionate about helping and serving people, but there's a big difference between helping and serving people to try to make yourself feel better, and helping and serving people because you have so much to give that you have to give it. You know it's the right thing to do. You just don't want to, you know, you don't want to hold on to your cup's overflowing, so you want to give it to other people. So that's one thing. I think another thing is coming back to, you know, you mentioned the victimhood. I've definitely been in victimhood. Once again, I'd be lying if I said I had never been in victimhood. I think a lot of us have been in victimhood, you know, and there's a lot of reasons for maybe why that is. And I'm not sure entirely how relevant going into the reasons behind it are, as much as it is becoming self-aware of it and then doing something about it. But, you know, I think switching out of victimhood and going back to the responsibility thing, is taking responsibility, realizing that my entire life is my responsibility. It's up to me. I could sit in bed and lay in bed all day if I want to, and pull the covers over and watch all the Harry Potters, which I love Harry Potter, but you know, that's an option. I could do that tomorrow, for example, on Friday, if I wanted to. I could do that. And honestly, I probably would be fine. Like, you know, it's not going to fucking set my world back if I really wanted to do that, but I'm not going to do that because this is, I think, an Ed Milet thing, but we have these deposits that we make every single day, every single moment when we make a choice. So if I did that, I'd be making a deposit into proof for who I am. This is who I am. I lay in bed and I pull the covers over myself and I lay and watch Harry Potter all day. Or I put a deposit in this box. Now I get up, I do my morning routine, I go to the gym, I work out, I hit the cold tub, I give my body hydration and good nutrients, I get sunlight, I get my work done, I make the phone calls I need to do, I'm doing the things I need to do to get myself tomorrow, next week, next month, next year to where I want to be. And I think that responsibility shift is something that's extremely vital as well within that process. And like I said, that it takes fucking time. Like, it's not like I just woke up one morning and I was like, oh, this is sweet, this is easy, I'm just going to do all this. Like, it takes time. You have to make those deposits every fucking day. You have to make the deposits, and the more of those choices you make, it just builds. They build and they build and they build, and eventually it's just who you are, and it's what you do. And now, honestly, it's what I love doing too. Like, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing right now every single day. And that's because I've chosen what I do, but I also choose how I look at what I do as well. So, yeah, those are my thoughts, and that's what I would kind of give to people too, if they're trying to shift that external, you know, locus of attention, is just focus in on you and your purpose and your meaning, and realize that your life is your responsibility. And when you get to the fucking end of your life and you're laying on your deathbed, it's gonna be you and you. There's going to be nobody else there. Your mom, your dad, girlfriend, wife, nobody else is going to be there laying with you. It's going to be you and you. And you're going to look yourself in the fucking eye and you're going to say, how'd you live? Did you become all you can become? Did you do what you wanted to do? Were you a man that we were true to your word? You know, that's what's going to matter. You know, and I've had that conversation with myself many times. And there's nothing more like that will fucking wake you up out of a fucking victim mindset than that. So those are my thoughts for that one.
Purpose is definitely a huge one. When I definitely started to find mine, and I think a lot of, you know, I've noticed a lot of guys are like, oh, you have to find it, and then once you find it, it's it, right? It's like this solid rock that's just like, it never changes, it never evolves. It's this one little thing that I keep in a box locked in my closet so no one else can see. And
Sure.
I don't think that's the case. For me, at least for me personally, when I found mine, right, it is not what it was exactly, but it's only just expanded, right? It's grown, but I've never subtracted from it, right? I've put like blinders on it to get it in one direction. And the more I go in that direction, the more I can pull along with me, right? It started
Mm.
off as when I got into recovery, and now it's the podcast to help. And then it's, meeting new people and boom, 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 boom. And it's so crazy after like 12 months of solid, consistent hard work in one direction, which I never had done in my entire life. No one had ever held me to that. This is all me. Like the universe is like, okay, I'll give you a little bit, kid. Right? I'll give you a little bit. I'll reward you a little bit. And it's wild to see like the difference. You're like, oh wow, I'm making friends with the guys way above my level. I'm doing a job that, objectively is really good. I'm living in a great city. I'm doing what I love, for the most part. I mean, you got to pay the bills at the end of the day, right? And until you create that life that you want. But that's what being a man is. Creation, in my opinion, right? Like that's such a huge part, building something, right? I don't know about you. I played with Legos growing up. I love Legos. I love building little things, right?
Nice.
But I've switched to like life building, right?
Mm.
Which is why video games were such a big problem for me for such a long time. Is I could build this life exactly the way I wanted it, but it was an escape from reality, right? Because reality was falling apart. And I know tons of guys who just play hours of video games, hours, right? They don't go outside. They don't interact with the real world. They just stay in their little bubble and play hours and hours and hours. But they have a purpose, right? Their purpose is to build this life in this little isolated world as the outside falls apart. And it takes a lot of courage, right, to come out of that and be like, I need help. I need XYZ, right? I can't do this on my own. That's another big thing I think separates boys from men is I need my brothers around me. Like I need these guys. I'm in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder, and we're going to war, right? And a boy's like, no, I can be the kick-ass dude from the movie who can fight off all the bad guys and get the girl and get the money and get the cars all by myself, right? So when it comes to asking for help, like when it comes to really when you're at your bottom, asking for help, I don't know if you had a bottom, but like when it comes to I can't figure this out, please help me. What did you experience and kind of what would your not even advice if you had a friend, right, who was going through something really hard and you knew they couldn't ask for help, what would you tell them to be like, dude, it's okay to ask for help. I get it. I have been at that place of darkness, but the only way out is with someone pulling you out of that hole. If you could do it by yourself, you would have, right? So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's absolutely necessary that, we ask for help sometimes. That's why we have each other. That's why there's other humans, I'm gonna go off on a little tangent and then I'm gonna come right back in. But I think that that's so important to realize that when I really look at life and I think about like I go deep. I'm like, why? Like, why is there anything? And a big thing I come back to is love, not like a superficial love, like grace, agape, deep love. And for this, to have connection, to interact, to be able to give and receive, to be able to feel emotions. And I think that being vulnerable and asking for help is fundamental in that process. Or I wrote a poem earlier called The Path, and the path is fucking hard sometimes. It's fucking dark sometimes. It's painful sometimes. And like I guarantee you, if I didn't have people to turn to at certain points in my path, I would not be here. 100 fucking percent. 100%. There's not a chance. So I think, that makes you more of a man to be vulnerable and to say, I'm fucked up right now. And it's okay. I'm fucked up. Something's not right. I need help. I need to fix this. I need to do this. That makes you much more of a man than hiding from it, than running from it, than trying to chase it away with something. So those are my thoughts on that. I think it's it's really vital that, you know, a man too is like, there's so much within that. But when I think about like, I guess this vision for me is like this ideal or this optimized type of a man, this divine man, this ideal version of myself as a man that I have in my mind. And that vulnerability is fundamental. It's absolutely like so fucking important. And especially I think because of like a lot of the conditioning that we've had as men in Western society, you know, especially me being in the military, like you see that masculine toxicity so fucking tough, dude. It's like, it's not even funny how real it is there. Like every single guy is like hurting so bad and they're just like joking and laughing and smoking and drinking and drugging it away because it's unacceptable in that type of an environment. So I think it's even more necessary that we can be vulnerable with ourselves and be vulnerable with other people. Because if we're not, then that shit doesn't get any better. It just, it sits there and it builds, and it's honestly, it's selfish. It's selfish because you're sitting there, you're playing. And I'm not saying that like, it's selfish that people have problems. It's selfish if you don't get help for your problems, because you're sitting there, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting other people, your people that are close to you, that love you, because you could be showing up in a much better, different way, a higher way for yourself and for them. So yeah, you know, it's a tough topic, and I don't want to offend anybody, but you know, I think yeah, you gotta go get help. You gotta ask, and it makes you more of a man. Like we have to get away from that stigma that like that being vulnerable is like weak or something. It's so much fucking harder. How is that weak? It's way harder. It's way harder to say like, I'm fucking hurting so much right now, like my girlfriend, whatever, or you know, my dog died, or life's just really fucking hard, or I don't know, like I don't have an answer, like I don't know what to do. That's so much harder to do, that to express that truth is so much harder than to fucking like sit there and be like, I'm good, nothing's fucking wrong with me. Like when you're fucking breaking apart inside.
Right.
So yeah, man, those are my thoughts on that. What do you think though? What are your thoughts?
Man, that's a good one for me. I think instantly back to my, when I was in active addiction and I was the most selfish person on the planet. If it didn't benefit me in any way, I didn't want anything to do with it. It was all me, 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 because I was so broken inside. Like, I was shattered from life and I had never asked for help. I don't think I had literally asked for help, like help on something I really needed, probably since the 5th grade. Like a long time, right? And I got into recovery last September. So like a good 12, 14 years where I was just like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Right. And it was easy. It was so easy just to be like, I'm okay, as my heart feels like it's being ripped out of my chest and my soul feels like it's being dampened by the monotony of all this daily shit. And I can't ask anyone. So all I'm going to do is take from you. I'm just going to take, because I have nothing in my cup. And all I'm going to do is take and take and take and take and take. And that's something a child does, right?
Yeah.
When you're a child, you get taught it's not okay to take other people's things without asking, right? You need to give. You need to learn to share, right? And somehow it gets lost nowadays. It just gets buried. Like you teach kids that, and when you get to a teenager or like a young man or an adult, like that just goes away.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of people lose that. I'm not quite sure why. I've never really sat down and be like, why does this happen? I think people lose the ability to be vulnerable with themselves first. I think that's what happened. I really lost the ability to be vulnerable with myself first. And we've talked about this when I could not sit alone in a room by myself for more than 10 minutes because of the texture of my own mind was so grated against my soul. It would just like nails on a chalkboard, and you just drown that out all the time, right? And then that just applies to everyone else. You just project that outwards, and everyone else's voices and problems are just nails on a chalkboard. You're like, I just can't handle. It's a never-ending negative feedback loop that never seems to lead anywhere except further down and further down. And you're like, when am I going to hit the bottom? And eventually some people do, right? But it's not bottom in the sense that you hit it inside, you hit it externally, right? And then you have to look, okay, well, what's happening? And it's an internal hellscape that has just forced you to this external reality, right? So I don't know, man. It's wild to look back with that clarity. It's so wild to me to be able to look back and be like, oh, this is where I was, and this is where I am now. And the only difference between me now and me then is me now took a chance on myself and asked for help. Right. Talked about this in the last episode. Broke down one night out in Washington, called my parents. I have a problem. It's 40 degrees. I'm in a hoodie and shorts. I'm freezing my ass off. I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, I have a problem with this. Please help me. And if I had not made that phone call, I would not be sitting here right now. Right. That level of vulnerability is probably one of the most painful things I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah, but probably one of the most liberating too. I had a very similar type of an experience when I really realized I had an issue too. I remember the date, bro. This is like a life-changing moment for me. I think I shared a little bit with you, but it was October 10th, 2019. I just finished a 10-day alcohol and cocaine bender with my dad. He came to visit me, and we went on this bender together and just partied and drank and did coke for 10 days straight. At the end of it, I remember it was the 10th, and I think I had to go back to work to the Army. I was active duty Army at this time too, mind you. I had to go back to the Army on I think the 11th or the 12th, and so we're at the end of it, and we're like recovering. Probably both of us going through some form of withdrawals, not cool at all, like really rough. And I remember he was sleeping out on my couch in my house I had over there. Is in Georgia, in Hinesville, Georgia. And I came out of my bedroom, like probably to go get like some food or water or something, and go back into my cave, to just like die for a while. And I saw him on the couch, and it fucking destroyed me to see him like that, to see him in such a bad way, in such bad shape, in many ways, not just physically, not in the best shape, but mentally, emotionally, just in rough shape, just passed out on my couch because we did what we just did. And I felt extremely guilty for that. And, I remember after that, just like kind of breaking down and going into my bathroom and just looking at myself in the mirror. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what the fuck are you doing with your life, dude? Like why? Like, what are you doing? It was a huge wake up call for me. And I realized very clearly, I was like, if you keep doing this, like, you're going to fucking ruin your life. And, everyone you love around you is going to be harmed or damaged by what you're doing with yourself. So, that was a huge turning point for me, as I made a commitment to myself that, like, I'm sobering up, I'm changing my entire life, I'm changing everything about me so that I could benefit myself and those around me. And I also remember, similar to you, I called my mom too. Called my mom, I think the next day or something like that. And the first time I ever told her anything about any type of abuse that she maybe maybe like thought like, yeah, maybe drinks a little too much here and there, but kid in his early 20s, not a big deal. But that was the first time I was like, no, I literally, like, I have a problem, and it was really, really powerful. I resonate with what you said. It was one of the hardest things I ever did, to let those words come out of my mouth, but at the same time, it was so freeing and liberating at the same time. So yeah, man, it's a tough thing, but I'll end this kind of note on this, man. If there's anyone out there listening or watching this and they're going through that stuff, just know you're not alone. Know that you can get through it. You can make it. I fucking know you can, because I made it. Jacob's made it. There's a lot of people who have made it through that stuff, and we are so much stronger than we think we are. We're so much stronger than our situation. We're so much stronger than our scenario. And we really can get through anything. So
yeah, man, the human spirit is a lot more durable, I think, than people give it credit for. I mean, the shit that I went through at 18, my good buddies know, my family know, right? And most kids that age don't have to step up like that, right? I mean, love my dad, love him to death. But when I needed him the most, he wasn't capable of giving me what I needed, right? He was still a boy in that matter because his dad had never been taught, right? So it was a boy raising a boy. That it doesn't end well in that situation, right? He's not equipped to equip me, right?
Sure.
So that trial of manhood, most guys never get, right? Or if they do, they don't have some. I'm not sure what changed in me. I'm not sure quite what it was. There's some part of me that just does not quit. And I think that all humans have that. I do. I genuinely believe all human spirits have that. I am going to make this come hell or high water. And people delude themselves into believing that they don't.
Mm.
And that is the difference. That is the
Mm.
one fucking difference. I always knew, even if it's hurting, I will always get done when I need to get done. Not when I want to get done, when I need to get done, when I need to get done every day, right? Like even last night, I was up late doing a spirituality group of 10, and you bet your ass I got up on time this morning. Wasn't fun, but I did it, right? That commitment every day to I'm going to get this done because this need, this drive, this purpose is why it's part of my manhood, right? It's that integration with manhood brings that sense of purpose, brings that inner that drive, that love for life, right? And that I think is another thing a lot of guys lose is that love for life, right? And there's a really good Rogan quote where he talks about, most men live quiet lives of desperation.
Mm.
And I sat with that for a while. And I looked around at all the men around in my life, and I was like hurt
Mm.
about by how true that was, right? They're just there's something inside them that died. And I even see that in some of my close friends. That ambition, that spark, that light just gets dampened by the
Mm.
world, right? By society, by what expectations other people place on them, right? Have you seen that? I'm like I am genuinely curious. Have you seen that light that maybe even in yourself, but especially in the people around you, when you finally really turn yours on, do you feel that difference? Do you feel like, oh, I can see the difference in who's turned on and who's not? And then kind of how do you deal with that?
I've absolutely seen it. I've absolutely seen it. It happens far too often, and honestly, it breaks my heart that it happens to people every day. And it's not like a one-time thing, it's a process of losing yourself.
Mm,
Um, and it's happened to me too. I have definitely strayed away from my path and away from my heart and my soul and my truth of who I am. And I think sometimes it's essential. Some might argue you have to lose yourself a little bit to truly find yourself.
mm,
So from one perspective, I'll say that it's a part of the polarity and duality of our human experience. And in a way, it's kind of necessary and essential
mm,
because this is the perfect way to explain it is like I just alluded to, how could you know who you are if you don't know who you're not?
mm,
So you have to be able to go through that process. But I think that some people can get lost in that, get lost in the noise, get lost in the thoughts, get lost in the distractions, the distortions. And like I said, it's a really hard thing to see, but it does happen. And I don't know what to call that. I think there's a lot of different things that you can call that, but I think the most important thing is to know that it's there.
mm,
Know that is something that's there. And like I was saying, it's I think it's an important part of our experience because it's a part of that. It's a part of that catalyst. It's a part of that pressure
mm,
that allows us to grow, right?
mm,
But the thing is that it has to be kept in a certain type of a balance so that you're actually growing. It's like this equal contraction and expansion. And then overall, over time, if you look at it, 6-12 months apart, you're seeing yourself grow and expand in a northward direction towards where you
mm,
want to go, where you want to be. But I think that when people get lost within that, it's kind of like there's an imbalance within this contraction and expansion that can
mm,
occur. And yeah, it's hard to see for sure, but that's another reason why I do a lot of my work, is to try to help people, work through that and get back on their path and remember who they are and why they're here. Get back to their heart and their soul, to their presence, to their vitality, to their light. Um, so yeah, man, I think that's my perspective on it. I've seen it. It's happened to me. And I definitely want to end with like what I've done and what I do and what I recommend to people who are going through that.
Mhm.
And this is just my perspective, man. Like, I'm very observative, observational. Any of those words. I mean, I look at things and very deeply and from an outside perspective.
Mhm.
And what I see going on is, in Western society, it's very over masculated. So we talked about this earlier, within the masculine toxicity in the military and in Western world. But there's another perspective I don't think a lot of people are aware of, with being too much masculine energy. And it's, what also is masculine is the mind. The mind is masculine principle. So when I think about this concept of being out of balance, out of alignment, you're away from your light. I think it's being out of balance within your mind and your heart, or your mind, body, soul type of connection. So, I think for me, that's what I experience a lot of times. If I'm ever out of alignment, I'm usually too masculine, too much mind, and I need to be more feminine, which is not necessarily more like, it's more like in my body. It's more present. It's more in my heart. That's what I mean by feminine. I mean more grounded, more in the present moment, more life, not so much thinking. So that's what I kind of see when I look at kind of our Western culture and where we're at. I think we have too much mind, too much masculine going on, which is an overthinking, which literally like can lead to distortion and distraction and getting lost and getting off of your true path and leading away from your heart and your center and your soul. So for me, it's obvious. How do you fix that imbalance? You come back home. Come back home to your heart. You come back home to your soul. Come back home to your body. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. Sometimes it's just feeling into it. But a simple way is like thinking about, things you've done in your past or your childhood that just fucking you love doing. Like, you like Legos. Go do some Legos. That'll bring you back out of your mind and into your heart and soul in probably a second. I like sports. I like basketball. I love getting in nature. Just playing, around. Like, so many different ways you can do it. But I think that's truly what we're missing when we're in those places, is we're missing like that deeper interconnection to like our heart, or our soul, our inner child, right? That part of us that is really at its core is just like curious and wondrous about this experience.
Yeah, dude, totally couldn't agree more. I mean, big one for me was breath work, right? We JJ, awesome dude.
Yeah.
Love going to that. Last time was really good. That experience of like, you have to be in your body. Like, to do the experience, you have to be in your body. It's such a foreign experience, at least it was to me when I first went, that I was like, whoa, I didn't know something like this existed. And most people don't, right? Like, it's a very, for some reason, it's a very niche concept, just like a lot of this stuff is. And the presence of even meditating, right? Most people are like, oh, I'll pop a Xanax, right? Or whatever they need to do to get down their anxiety. And if you could just sit by yourself for 15 minutes in the morning, if you need it, 15 minutes at night, whatever, however much you need, and just like listen and set an intention before, to be like, yeah, man, I'm just going to sit here myself and like be here, right? Like, I get up 5 in the morning, do my little morning routine in the bathroom, whatever, pray, and then I have 45 minutes I sit by myself. That 45 minutes allows me to get through the day with such clarity and intention of like, I've processed what I need to do for the day. I've processed how I feel about the day. And I know, okay, maybe I'll go for a run around 3 because I usually get tired. Like, and once you start to build these little habits in, your spirit seems to be a lot more in motion more. And I think that's what happens, is you hit a wall, right? You hit that 2 p.m. wall, 3 p.m. wall, work's kicking your ass. you had a shitty day with your boss, you know, your car's breaking down, something like that, right? And you're like, you hit that wall and there's no tools, right? There's no tools to bring you back into balance, like we talked about, to get you back in that flow of energy. And you just crash, right? Because you're like trying to climb up the ladder and you can't. So you use something to like just numb out the psychological pain, right? You're focusing so much on the mind, right? And I think that's what a lot of people get confused. When I really only tried to outthink my problems, it never worked, right? We have a saying in 12 step, it's think your way into right, or sorry, it's act your way into right thinking, not think your way into right acting. And that's such a concept that changed my life. Just like acting the way you would want future you to act, the man you want to be. If you would just start acting like that, right? Like you're that.
Yeah.
You're already him. You're just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up at that point, right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah, two huge thoughts there. The first is I'm a huge Einstein fan. I actually have little things like this all over my office and all over my house with his quotes. This one says, "Stay away from negative people. They have problems for every solution." But the one quote I thought of that was correlative to yours, it's almost verbatim. He said, "You can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it." So it's basically the same thing that you're saying. It's similar anyways. You know, if you want to try to think through a problem, you have to change your level of thinking, your consciousness, or the way you're looking at it, or take action, or do something other than the same type of thinking that created it. So I definitely can resonate with that too. You know, and the second aspect was definitely agreeing, you know, with you about our feeling and our being. You know, it's like, do you know who Neville Goddard is by chance?
I do not.
He's a powerful guy. He's from, I think, the 70s, and he's like, I wouldn't call him Alan Watts. He was definitely a little different than Alan Watts for sure. But, you know, in that type of a realm, you know, had seminars and talks and tons of lectures and videos and stuff on YouTube. And a big one that he had was about, it was titled "The Feeling is the Secret." So it's the feeling, it's the action, it's what you're feeling. He said the feeling is what's important within our experience. He didn't say you think it's what you feel that matters, because the feeling is more real than the thought. You know, the thought's a form of an interpretation. It's an analysis. The mind is used to categorize things and understand and to exchange information. But our feeling, that feeling is real. That's real. You know what I mean? So I like that one a lot. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a powerful little gem that listeners and viewers can pluck away from here. So
yeah, dude. I mean, it's so funny. There's another good quote that came up for me. It's all philosophers come to the same conclusions, right? Like all the greats, given enough time, come to the same conclusions. Like human wisdom always reaches the same summit. And people are like, "Oh no, I haven't figured out this way or this way." It's like, dude, you're all getting to the same place. You're just taking a different fucking path.
yeah.
Right? Like, it's not rocket science. It's hard, but everyone can get there if they would just start. And that's kind of what I wanted to wrap up with, man, is when I was so paralyzed by fear and I couldn't even take one step in front, I was like, "Oh, if I take the wrong step, then I won't get to the end, right? I won't get the prize. I won't get to the man who I want to be." I was so terrified to take even one action, because if we were taught, if you make a mistake, you won't get to where you need to be, right? That's beaten into us since we were kids. And I see that all around me. You know, there are guys with all these great ideas, and I'm like, "Well, start. Like, just start." And they're like, "I can't." I'm like, "Why? Why? Give me one good reason." And they sit there and they're like, "Well, I can't make a mistake." Right? I don't know how. I didn't know how. I didn't know how I was going to get out of my addiction. I didn't know how I was going to start this. I didn't know how. I still don't know how I'm going to get to the man I'm going to be, but I can figure it out along the way, right? Because I started. So, how did you start? And then also, if say there's some, young guy out there who's terrified. He's like, Brendan, I have nothing. I have nobody. How do I start? Couple steps he could do.
I'll just share with kind of like the first thing that came to me when you first said, how do you start? And there were many levels and still are going to be more, to my evolution, to my journey so far. But there was one very important step that I took, and it was shortly after, maybe a couple months after, the end of that story I was just telling you about my dad on October 10th, 2019. This was early 2020. And one of the biggest decisions I ever made for myself was every single time that I had a temptation, every single time I had, an urge, I wanted to go party, I wanted to go see an old friend who I knew was going to get me into trouble, I would sit down in this one spot in my apartment, right in front of my closet in my bedroom, and I would meditate. And this is before I even knew what meditation was. I didn't even know if even I referred to it as meditation then, as much as maybe it was just me sitting my fucking ass down and not letting myself go and do what I knew parts of me wanted to do. So if I could tell that friend or that person something, I would maybe just say that is like, sometimes, maybe we can't take a step, and that's okay. It's okay to just sit there and just be with who you are, where you are, with what's happening. And in those moments, honestly, I think I've learned more than I ever have sometimes by taking any steps, because sometimes you realize you don't need to take a step. You're great, perfect just where you are. And, I think that for anyone who's on this path, and there's different levels to it, whether it's path of self-actualization or realization or enlightenment or healing, or maybe they, like you said, they're just in a really bad way right now and they just want to get to somewhere better. The only thing that's wrong with right now is that you're not making right now okay. That's it. Eckhart Tolle said something similar. He said the only thing wrong with the present moment is that you're not at peace with the present moment. Doesn't mean that anything needs to change, and this is powerful wisdom, man, because you see people spend their whole life thinking that money or a boat or a car or a truck or a house or a relationship or some type of something they make up in their mind is going to make them feel better. It's going to make them feel self-accepted. It's going to make them feel good enough. It's going to make them happy. It's going to give them joy. It's going to give them peace. It's going to give them love. That's not true. The truth is it's already here for us, and it's inside of us. And we are the ones who individually have to find that out and uncover that and allow that and learn that. And yes, you learn that through experience. Yes, you learn that through taking steps. Absolutely. There's a lot of necessary steps along this path, but I think sometimes it's much more powerful, much more wise, and more challenging to take no steps, to sit there in stillness and just be with yourself.
Brendan, man, I appreciate you. Want to thank you for coming on. If people want to keep up with you, where can they go?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I have going right now that's kind of correlative to this, type of self-help stuff is probably my Instagram, lion.heart.consulting. That's the Instagram. So putting out a ton of good content on there. It's, about a lot of stuff, but definitely, aligned with this type of content. So that would probably be the one, honestly. That's really where I run all my stuff from. So people, if you guys want to interact or connect, that'd be the place.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you have questions or comments, please feel free. I'm open to any feedback. I hope you got a lot out of this. I know I did. Ashley, all you do is keep coming back. Looking forward to seeing you next time.